The European Union's initiation of membership talks with Ukraine represents a pivotal political milestone. Now, although the path ahead is long and arduous, this process signifies a crucial step in Ukraine's quest for deeper integration with the West.
Now, joining us today on TVP World to discuss the implications of this historic move and what it means for Ukraine's future is Mikhail Alexseev, professor from San Diego State University. Hello, and thank you for joining us on TVP World tonight.
My great pleasure.
So we have obviously this big step, a small step yet a big step taking place today. Still a long road ahead for Ukraine to join the European Union. But really, in your mind, how significant, how historic of a day is this today to know that not even Hungary stood in the way, and it looks like the road and the path ahead is clear and defined for Ukraine?
Well, it is a very significant step. It is vitally important for Ukraine, even for Ukraine's survival as a nation and for Ukraine's survival as a democracy. I have been tracking those kinds of views in Ukraine since 2016 with my opinion surveys with Ukraine National Academy of Sciences. And the European orientation is something that is a big part of Ukraine's civic national identity that gelled, particularly in the last, 10, 20 years. And that's how they see their future. It's a very important step. However, I would say that it's also important, in addition to making some formal moves that facilitate the negotiation process, accession, to also show as much as possible any kind of practical steps. I remember how excited everybody was in Ukraine when the European Union granted visa-free travel to Ukrainians, I believe, in 2017. So things like that, in addition to big fundamental movements to give people of Ukraine hope, because they, from their standpoint, they are dying for the European Union right now.
All right, earlier today we had the pleasure to talk to Bogdan Mihailo, the editor-in-chief of Kyiv Post. And when asked about this particular situation, he described that Ukraine needs to be going into this discussion, negotiation with honesty about what still needs to be done and what are the steps already taken. And Brussels needs to engage Ukraine with clarity of where they actually stand. And only with full transparency can this actually be a practical discussion instead of one that is just merely symbolic. Do you echo this sentiment?
Well, I think obviously, and I will tell you not just from my survey data, but also talking to my friends and relatives in Ukraine, they absolutely have a lot of these kinds of concerns. They want their problems to be out in the open, and they believe that the European Union needs to be aware of these things, but they also have this I believe, very enthusiastic view that if they had a credible vision of joining, if they believe that the probability is high, then they would also be more willing to deal with those problems. But they need help. They will appreciate more international help in transparency, in governance, in running various operations. There is a big societal foundation in Ukraine to accept these reforms and changes and to move on. So in some ways, I believe that there is this tricky debate, like, do you meet a certain condition? And if you don't meet that condition, well, then your membership or next step is postponed. Or, we give you credit for this, but we're going to engage more with you, and we're going to push things through from the ground up as well. So I think joining the EU, making more moves toward the EU, will actually improve the internal situation in Ukraine as well.
Well, I would say that this comes at a really interesting time because Ukraine's at war. It's under martial law. which makes it almost impossible or very, very difficult for journalists to shed light on certain areas, say, when it comes to corruption and reforming certain institutions. Due to martial law, it makes that very, very difficult. Not only to mention, Ukraine is at war, and yet it is still having to fulfill a multitude of very rigorous formalities to hand over to the European Union to be able to get to this point. So I would say that that is absolutely 100% commendable. But you also raised a very important point, and that is, well, as we look at the situation that the country is in war, and the road being very, very long ahead, how do we reconcile those two issues?
It's a very tight rope to walk, because indeed there are temptations to use the war situation on the part of some officials to benefit themselves. There is also the problem of having people believe in the positive outcomes. There is, however, and again, my surveys show that very strongly, there is a very strong positive view on determination of Ukraine to prevail in the war. And part of it is because they basically feel they have nothing as an alternative. There is no alternative. For Ukraine, the alternative to the European future would be subjugation by Putin. It will mean more butchers and massacres like that. It will mean more mass cases of human rights violations, including kidnapping of children and rape and things like that. It will mean exterminating Ukrainian culture, removing Ukrainian books from the library, banning Ukrainian language from schools and things like that. So for them, remaining who they are, remaining a kind of a vibrant, aspiring democratic country is absolutely pivotal, and so that pushes them there toward the European Union. So as far as war is concerned, I think when I analyze the situation, it basically comes to the importance of military support. Probably that it has, because it has a lot of ramifications. It has ramifications in terms, for example, of Ukrainians being willing to mobilize for the front. If they feel that there is more weapons that they can use to fight Russia, there is less reluctance to evade mobilization. The same may go for a sort of rent-seeking behavior and thinking of making quick profit off, war economy and hiding it away somewhere. So that these kinds of things, I think, to improve them, military support is probably critical.
All right. So the way I look at this, when it comes to politically, I think even though there are a little bit of struggles there, it's not. Most of the European countries are on the side of Ukraine. But then we take a look at the economic side of things, and we do have to remember at the end of the day, EU is an economic body with a free market, an open market. And we've recently only seen like this little bit of Ukrainian grain coming into the rest of Europe, and that has already caused a rift between some of the countries. So do you think that economically opening up Ukraine to the European market would be so disruptive that maybe there will be reserves from some of these countries?
Well, I think there will, of course, potentially be various tensions, but I think also the European Union has the mechanisms and Ukraine has the willingness to make the kind of arrangements that would strike different compromises. But you can see a lot of grievances, for example, if things are not thought through, if they're under-regulated properly. You can see the discontent on the part of the Polish farmers, for example, from the immediate influx of large volumes of Ukrainian grain, which, Ukraine, of course, intends to export, not necessarily to flood the market. They would like to get this grain to legitimate markets and not to create these kinds of tensions. But these things, if there is not comprehensive strategy, they may be hard to put together. They may cause these frictions. However, I do believe that they're solvable, particularly if there's a will and the understanding how much it means particularly in war conditions, gives me at least some hope that more progress can be made on these sorts of problems.
Yes, indeed. Well, Mikhail Alexseev, Professor, San Diego State University, thank you very much for joining us and discussing these issues with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.